Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of Insightfully Speaking, a podcast by Kardec Group. My name is Adam Osborne, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-hosts Anne Sinclair and Humberto Schubert, as we, along with our guest, look at recent events, news, and other interesting things from a spiritist perspective. Our guest this time is psychiatrist and Jungian analyst Anahy Fonseca. The topics we're going to look at today are conflicts in the Middle East, a master's in witchcraft, spooky goings-on in Revue Spirite, and what can we learn from Joanna de Ângelis? So let's start as always by having a quick hello with my co-hosts. Anne, Humberto, how are you both?
Hi. Thank you, Adam. It's nice to be back. Hi, Humberto. Nice to be joining with you again. Looking forward to this session with Anahy as well, who is a fabulous guest. We're preparing for the winter. Autumn is coming. The clocks will be changing next week. The leaves are blowing, and finally we're getting a little bit more cooler weather after unusually very hot weather
Yep.
at the end of the summer here in the UK.
Hi guys, I have been traveling a lot recently, and I'm also very excited to chat about Joanna de Ângelis.
And Humberto, you were a bit like with us. You went to Salvador just recently, and a couple of months ago, we also went to Salvador. We went to see Mansanto Camino, went to see the Institute Grupo Spiritualist, which I believe you went to as well.
Yeah, Salvador is obviously a very spiritual city, an important place for everyone interested in mediumship, or also the charity groups that are very active there. And I had the privilege to meet some new people, and to visit the very close friends of mine, like Florencio, Tarcisio, and Divaldo Franco.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be there, and you've been there enough times as well, haven't you? You know these places quite well.
Yes, indeed. It's interesting because if you look from a material point of view, the city is, you can find a lot of poverty, a lot of social inequalities, lots of difficulties. But it's I was hearing a recording today by another author on the internet, and he says wherever you look for the beauty, and there you can find the beauty, the kindness, and the love in people who run these institutions, who can see the needs of others and provide for them without waiting for, oh, somebody else will do that. They just pick it up and take it upon themselves to put these wonderful projects in place. It's sad that they need to be there because of the poverty that exists, but this is the world we live in, isn't it? The world of contrast, the world in which there is not justice as yet.
Absolutely. And just to remind all those people out there that Grupo Spiritualist, run by our good friend Florenzo Anton, that is the group that here at Kardec Group we fundraise for via our High Five campaign. And you can find all the details about that on our website, www.kardec.org.uk. Let's bring on our guest, Anahy Fonseca, who is a member, amongst other things, of the Spiritist Medical Association of Brazil, the Jungian Association of Brazil, and the World Psychiatric Association. And she's worked with the diagnosis and research of the relationship between spirituality and mental health, and recently has been running a course about self-discovery based on the Spiritist psychology of Joanna de Ângelis. Anahy, thank you for finding time for being with us today. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you, Adam. And hello, everyone. It's great to be here among friends. We have been talking a lot, right, Anne, also. And it's great being here. And I will just say that, of course, we are in springtime in Brazil. And it's also kind of a strange springtime because it's cold. Everybody thinks that in Brazil it's warm, but here down in the south it's cold. So I think we are in the same vibration, let's say.
Absolutely. So let's go on to the first topic that we've got lined up for today. And it is something which I think we should talk about, even if it's just briefly. So, at the time of recording, thousands of people around the world, as well as most news outlets, are on tenterhooks, waiting for the latest piece of information in relation to the current crisis affecting the Middle East. With declarations of war, visits from heads of state, and demonstrations en masse, the Israel-Hamas conflict has already resulted in hundreds of deaths, hostage negotiations, and destruction on both sides of the Israel and Gaza borders. This is a sensitive topic, and for many, it's more sensitive than the Ukraine-Russia conflict that has been going on for just short of 2 years. And we know that this area of the world, which is not only the birthplace of the Abrahamic religions, but has also been a key area for merchandise and migrants to cross between Europe, Asia, and Africa, was also a hotbed of battles and takeovers for thousands of years, with the Egyptians, Greeks, Babylonians, Assyrians, Romans, and many others staking their claim at one point or another. There are many claimed reasons for the recent violence to take place, and of course, no violence can be justified. But I wanted to get your thoughts on this current event, but obviously it's a very delicate matter. So, Anne, Humberto, Anahy, your thoughts about what's happening in Israel and Gaza right now?
Yeah, so I think that from my perspective, I read the just little snippets of the news, because the news can be very shocking and impacting. And one of the things that, with no disrespect to all the people who are suffering, is that if I then become involved in being outraged and suffering to the point, I'm adding to the energy of the fire. So I mean, people might not agree, but the way that I've decided to look at it is we're all brothers and sisters on this planet. By the law of reincarnation, we know we are born on one side of the border in one life, on the other side of the border on a different life. We have many lives, and once we really fall into that knowledge and we really discover that we are brothers and sisters, and that the happiness and the well-being of all of us and of our planet depends on us being able to work together. That is not taking away anything from the pain and destruction, which is absolutely devastating. But what I decided that I do as an exercise for myself in this is to observe the news at a little bit of a distance and to be irradiating love and peace and healing to all people who are being affected, so that I don't become also an instrument of the conflict, of the hatred, of the misery, but that I might try and bring a contribution at least of equilibrium. It is challenging at times because like I say, news is coming to you from all different directions with different intentions. It can be really challenging. I can be triggered in things of myself that from this life or from previous lives as well. So I'm being quite mindful of that and just trying every day is just sending my love, peace, thoughts of healing for everybody who is transitioning back into the spiritual world in horrific conditions. And that we may, as a humanity, we need to find a way forward, because we can't pretend that things are isolated. They're not really. Everybody's involved in some way, just if nothing else on the energy level. So we really are being challenged to find how can we move forward, and not keep doing the same thing over and over again, trying to get a different result, as they say, but trying to see how can we try and resolve things in a different way. I have no solutions, of course. I mean, I'm just a one little person amongst the many in the planet, but that's the way I'm looking at it at this time.
Well, I think a lot of what we have discussed about the war in Ukraine is valid to this moment, because a spiritist and actually a spiritualist perspective is based on the most radical universality we can possibly conceive. So we have to avoid taking sides and making quick judgments based on our former prejudice and dispositions towards or in favor of one side or another. And that's the first step we should take to, as Anne just said, not to contribute to the escalating of violence and negative feelings about anything, including this conflict, but anything in life, from political parties to family disputes and controversies. But also, it is very important in order to avoid hypocrisy and any sort of misguided comparison. We have to separate the legitimate claims from two folks, Israelis and Palestinians, from the deeds of a terrorist group. And I think it is very dangerous that some people are equalizing a terrorist group with the state of Israel as it was a possible comparison, as they were both fighting for their people, and so, while in fact no terrorist group on earth ever fought for freedom or for liberty or for justice. Terrorism is the attempt of destroying the other and eliminating the other. And I'm not here defending the state of Israel or pushing towards the Israeli narrative. But if we want a solution in the long term, because it's a very deep and complex conflict, we have to stop accepting the idea of Hamas representing the Palestinian people, as we should all obviously stop accepting the idea that the Nazi party represents the German people, for example. That's not true, and that's not acceptable, and would only lead us to misguided and very twisted representation of what is actually happening.
Yeah, and no, we can also say that we have to or remember that the government don't always represent completely the people that they represent. You know, we've seen this through all the demonstrations that have happened throughout many countries recently, including in Israel and here in London as well, that people just marching saying, we don't agree with this on either side. Anahy, your thoughts?
So I agree with Humberto and Anne in all aspects, what they have said. And I wanted, well, my analysis is from the psychological point of view, in depth psychology, Jungian, as a Jungian analyst, and also as a Joanna de Ângelis teacher, that we are going to be talking today about that. But we all know, and people that don't know, that she's bringing all the psychology that man has developed in the last 100 and more years with the Spiritist knowledge, the knowledge of the Spirit, and the impact in that in our consciousness is enormous. Because she's talking about cosmic consciousness. So we are in a verge of, of another big step in humankind development of consciousness. So why do we still have a lot of conflicts from the past with all that we know about, about psychology, about quantum physics, about spiritism and spiritualism, from the East, from the West. So why do we still have this kind of conflicts? And I think we should think of this shift that we are going, and that it's kind of splitting humankind if we can say that, and we can see this in our societies all around the globe, a lot of with the internet and things like that, that we are always kind of in one side or the other, and having this difficulty of analyzing deeply what's going on. So I think when, first of all, when Anne says that she's sending her love and vibrations of peace to everyone in the region, everyone that is in conflict, this is a non-dual approach. This, we leave this ego and the other, me and the other. We leave the enemy and this aspect of perceiving and, our perceptions also of reality, that I'm very different from my brother or sister or in different cultures. Yes, we are in the ego consciousness. But this shift of consciousness, what Joanna de Ângelis says about cosmic consciousness, that we are heading towards this development, new development of humankind, it's totally non-dual. Okay, it's when I really, all big religions and philosophies all around the world that are, come from many hundreds, millennia, they say what? We are brothers and sisters. We are sparkles of, this divine aspect of life, the creation of life. It doesn't matter how you want to define it. God, the transcendent one, ultimate reality, unity, wholeness, plenitude, doesn't matter, because it's not going to change the fact that we come from this this dimension of light, peace, love, and creation, loss of creation. So okay, but to get there, to humanity get to this point, so we have to know ourselves deeply. And people that haven't watched, I strongly advised to watch Face to Face, the name of the interview with Jung, that originated Man and His Symbol, the only book that he wrote for general public. And there is one a small part of the interview. This was in the 1960s, something, 2-3 years before Jung died. So he was very much the wise old man at that point. And Freeman asks Jung, what is the origin of evil? Okay, it's a great question that I think if we are talking about terrorism, fanaticism, war, okay, we are talking about our shadows and our collective shadows that still remain, and that makes us angry, resentful, and etc., etc. So when Morgan Freeman asks Jung, what is the origin of evil? And Jung says, man is like humankind, is the origin of all evil. And we know far too little about ourselves and the psyche, of course, our psyche. So, okay, Jung says this in the 1960 something. And I wanted just to bring everybody back to 1400,000 years ago, 1400 before Christ, actually. The Oracle of Delphi. What everybody knows that. What was written in the Oracle of Delphi in the Temple of Apollo? It was written, know thyself. So we don't have, okay, all that we developed of psychology until Joanna de Ângelis appears and Allan Kardec, and bringing all this knowledge of our spirit, as Anne said, that we reincarnate because one lifetime, it's logical, wouldn't be enough for us to kindle a light in our souls, as Jung says. The purpose of existence is to kindle a light in the depths of our soul. I think it's a very beautiful sentence that Jung said. So until we do that, and to do that, we have to work with our shadows. We will be making wars, and millennia passes because to the depths of our psyche, our collective unconscious, space and time are totally relative. So like 2,000 years maybe mean nothing if we stuck to old patterns, archetypal patterns of enemies, of seeing my brother or sister as an enemy. And we don't understand that we are really brothers and sisters in the deepest way possible. We are here to learn. We are here to actually kindle a lot of lights, not only one light, and we are going to do that together. So always when we see the other as enemy, it doesn't matter the culture, the history, we are in the shadow of our and in the darkness of our souls. I'm not judging because it's not like we don't have the right to judge each other, because it's very specific, as Anne said. Only someone that has felt dear ones dying in a war can understand the pain. But I just wanted everybody who's listened to that to understand that the pain and separation are felt by the ego consciousness and our understanding of ourselves in this lifetime. What Joanna is trying to help us is to go further than this lifetime and to understand and not project even in the afterlife a thought that I'm going to be exactly what I'm here today. That's why Spiritist knowledge is so important in spiritualist religions all around the world, because when you really try, it's like Allan Kardec said, faith with reason, right? Reason, faith. So when we really try to know ourselves, to understand ourselves, then we will understand that it's no point at all in fighting or in projecting an enemy, that it's really within each one of us. The enemy is our shadows, inner shadows, what we don't understand, and that we project onto others. The land that I have to conquer, it's inside of myself, it's not outside of myself. So I think that's, for now, maybe it's enough.
Thank you, Anahy. No, it's wonderful to hear those thoughts, especially the links with the works from Joanna as well regarding this kind of thing. And you're right, within Spiritism we have so much that we can look to as reference regarding this. The Spirits book, question 919, the How to Overcome All Evil, Know Thyself, chapter 11 of the Gospel According to Spiritism is all about love thy neighbor as yourself. This wonderful message which we've had at least written down for over 4,000 years. It's nothing new. We've known about it as humanity for a long time. But while you're talking, there's something that came to my mind, and it's actually a poem written in Sanskrit called Raghupati Ragava, and it was one of the favorite poems of Mahatma Ghandi. And when I had the privilege of having an interview with his grandson, Arun Ghandi, we talked about this. And part of the lyrics are this: all names of God refer to the same supreme being. Lord, please give peace and brotherhood to everyone, as we are all your children. There's some really good sung versions of this poem, which I'll put in the link for this episode, but all that just came to my mind while you're talking. But let's move on now to a few more light-hearted topics. And we are coming up to the end of October, near to Halloween, so I thought it would be good to look at some spooky studies that have been announced. The University of Exeter here in the UK has opened a master's degree in magic and occult science. The program, which is part of their School of Arab and Islamic Studies, allows students to delve into rites and rituals from the occult texts of major religions, to study the history of witchcraft, and even phantasmagoria and illusions from the time of Kardec. Unfortunately, from what I've been able to see, there are no mentions of Kardec or Spiritism in their reference material. But would this be a course that would be of any interest to any of you guys? Would you be willing to study it? And do you think that this kind of thing could pave the way for more formal studies of Spiritism?
Maybe I'll just dive in there. It's just interesting because in which kind of approach will they be studying it? I think I think it's good to bring things together, to put them under the microscope, if you like, of academia. I think that there is an element that I think might be lost. Maybe I'm wrong. Is because a lot of our studies are very materialistic. So even things like the occult and witchcraft and everything can be viewed from a materialistic point of view as well. And when you're thinking that we are trying to embrace our spiritual side, our energy side, then I just wonder, because there is a difficulty, as far as I see, in putting the boundaries in terms of studying it when it's so subjective. But of course, in the world of psychology, we have this problem of subjectivity as well. I think it's really good. I think it's always good to study and to bring things together and to compare. Um, I think in the past there might have been some things were not allowed because of the churches and things like that. So they were banned, put under in a cupboard, locked away, not allowed. But now, and we live in a time where everything is revealed, if you like. All the doors are open, all the masks are falling, everything's coming up. And it's about, I think, maybe trying to make sense of things. Where do they fit? What do I think of this? I think that if we look at humanity, anybody who's an anthropologist, not my case, would potentially say that there must be some kind of practice of these kind of things since time immemorial. It's part of our humanity. But I think particularly in the West, and because of the Christian churches, it was kind of put aside and not allowed. So it was done undercover on the by marginalized people, and so it was a lot of misunderstanding who come into it. I'm really curious to see what they're going to come up with. I think that you can't take things lightly, because there is the energy, there is the invisible world exists, and you need to approach it with respect and dignity. And if you think that, you know, I just think if people, they make jokes about it. I think there are lots of movies like that. People like, oh, get the occult, make a joke of it, and then they end up in deep trouble. So I hope that it will bring light to things, and I'm curious to see what they will publish. Will I take the course? I don't think so at this point, but I'm glad that things are coming up and that they are being made available to study in places of study like universities.
Well, about 14 years ago, I was making my PhD in Germany, in the Martin Luther University. And that was a 2 centuries old library there on esotericism and magic and mysticism and so on. And I found all of Kardec books there in that library. And because it is an old library in Germany, it had a very explicit Eurocentric and scientific approach to all sorts of spiritualism. And you could spot that, although interested, the organizers of that library, they had a small bias or prejudice against the subject itself. So I only hope that we can start studying these issues in an unbiased way, and we don't need to take an explicit spiritualist approach either. But we could just discuss what is behind these claims and all these beliefs and research that has been made for hundreds of years. And recently, this week, I was in the Brazilian Congress of Psychiatry with my colleagues, and we experienced great success, so to say, in our table on the proofs, the available evidence for the survival of the soul and human consciousness after bodily death. That's something that could not happen 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And it is not only possible, but it raised a very intense discussion, and we were people from many areas, like hospital directors and many scholars from the entire country, wanted to chat and to talk about the evidence we presented and so on. So from 15 years ago or 10 years ago to this moment, I think we already experienced a dramatic shift and a dramatic transition in the way academic life deals with paranormal or the spiritual experiences. And I think the media and the population did not absorb all the changes that we have been experiencing in academic life yet.
So I'm very glad that, and I have a company, the book, the Science of Life After Death, that Alexander and Humberto and Mariana have written. Because like 10 years ago in the Brazilian, I helped Alexander to found the commission of spirituality and and religion and psychiatry in the Brazilian Psychiatry Association. And around 10 years ago, there was a meeting, and the question that was posed to the public was, do you believe that the mind is a product of the brain, or that the brain produces the mind? So the spiritual position and the materialistic. And then in the beginning, the question was posed to the audience, all psychiatrists. So it was like 70% of the psychiatrists would say that the mind is the product of the brain, so the materialistic point of view. In the end, with all the researches and thoughts about science, developments of science, after the two, it was like a debate. So after the two talked, we asked again for the audience, and it turned like 70% agreed that with Alexander, that the mind uses the brain with the spiritual thoughts. So this is happening. We know around academia is changing little by little around the globe. As you said, I am in the World Psychiatry Association. I'm an executive committee member. And so around the globe, and in England, actually here in Brazil, I'm in the South, I founded with other colleagues the Department of Psychiatry and Spirituality. So why? Because of the researches. And for some reason, the media kind of, and the status quo, they won't acknowledge all of these developments in science. But since we develop with science, and science is, we use the reason to observe and nature, and we are part of nature. The psyche, the mind, is part of nature. So what it's difficult is because we have to observe deeply ourselves. Then we go back to the Delphi Oracle. But anyway, so it's it's changing. So now you have people like Humberto, Alexander, Marianne, and other researchers all around the globe researching, like Cloninger, Robert Cloninger, that comes in through his researches with the self-transcendent aspect of personality. And we are studying paranormal experiences. So what do people mean with occult? In the Middle Ages, like Anne was saying, okay, we would burn the witches, the mediums, and the healers, actually, because we were all ignorant and we were in the Dark Ages. But since now we have developed a lot of our science, it's like ignorance, I understand. If we look disrespectful, as Anne said, at what we call the occult and magic. Why? Because the occult is simply what has not been revealed yet to our consciousness. And we can also think what we don't understand yet. Then we call the occult, and we are always afraid of it, right? But see, I would take the course if they would talk about Jung, and they would be in this sense, and they would bring the researchers on the field. I myself am coordinator of national research that it's also in partnership with Professor Lionel Corbett from Pacifica Graduate Institute. He's a very well-known author in what we call the religious function of the psyche, and that, as Jung call this religious and spiritual dimension of our psyche. And he's professor of depth psychology at Pacifica Graduate Institute in California. And we are doing a research, so I'm coordinating here in Brazil, we are doing a research in what science now calls anomalous experiences. So that we won't call spiritual experiences as in the past, because then it's kind of biased. You are already saying that it's spiritual. But if we want to be strictly rigorous with science, then anomalous experiences is the way that we are trying to observe this kind of experience. But they have to do with paranormal, phenomena that has always happened to mankind. And I just wanted to remind people that Jung's monography in, his final thesis in medical school in Switzerland was on the psychology and pathology of the so-called occult phenomena. So if the course is honest, and it's not only, wanting to create something interesting for people, but like, as Anne said, if it is scientific and is respectful with tradition and with science, then they would have to have people that understand, and you have lots of people, have many in England, Jungian associations, for instance, and other authors also, but authors and scientists that you really study occult phenomena, paranormal phenomena. And also, I wanted to say that Jung considered, everybody knows that he treated a Nobel Prize physician, physics, actually, of physics, not physician, physics, and from this partnership, they created the term of synchronicities also, that we can talk about later if you guys want. But the main aspect, and that's really, a totally an opening to this new paradigm in science, the spiritual paradigm, that we are going towards it, because materialism cannot answer any longer all the complexities of, the understanding of ourselves and of nature, because we are part of nature. Our psyche is part of nature. So to understand, and as I saw Anne talking in another episode of your podcast, about us being co-creators of our reality and of our world. To understand that, we have to understand that psyche is part of nature, that we are all interconnected, and as Jung said, that psyche and matter are aspects of the same reality. Okay, so we are deeply, deeply connected, and it's only a way that we manifest our reality that changes, or that we perceive this expression of our reality. So if we want to understand that we are all matter, and that we are going to finish our consciousness with death, and then after death there is nothing, then we are going to have a certain perception of the world, and we are going to be, of course, psychologically leading with this perception of the world that we have. But science is proving, as the wonderful book that Humberto is one of the authors, science is proving that materialist vision doesn't, cannot answer everything. And it's kind of dying, in a sense, this way of seeing the world, because it's not complex enough. And it doesn't answer to all our existential questions: from where we come, what are we doing here, and where are we heading towards, right? So if we talk also, I just want to finish my talk talking about magic. And what is magic? The word, as Professor Corbett says, is disenchanted with materialism vision. So we lost this enchantment that gives us a psychic life, and if courses like that would be respectful to this inner force that drives evolution, okay, towards, and we are part of nature, and nature is evolving, so we are also evolving our consciousness towards a shift in consciousness, then it would have to understand not only the traditions of magic, but why the psyche has to develop a sense of magic. Because of what Anne said, we are co-creators. So it's symbolic. It can be concrete in a sense that I do something. And in Brazil, we have lots of traditions coming together. We have religious syncretism. Humberto was talking about Bahia, and it's totally, you can experience the religious syncretism. Everybody goes everywhere and really tries and experiment. Not that it's going to say that I'm from this religion, but experiment, think it's cool. Oh, I like the way I felt in the temple, in the Spiritist house, in the church, in the Catholic church, whatever. And this is really something very Brazilian. So that's why it's kind of easier for us scientists and researchers to go. For instance, we have now like 500 answers of our questionnaires that are totally private and is totally in the internet, of people describing paranormal and anomalous experiences. And we are in a moment that we are analyzing the experience from the perspective of Carl Gustav Jung's complex psychology, to just give a contribution to the understanding. So just to say that this shadow, this magic that can be sensed as a shadow, okay, but if we understand that it's a need of the psyche to be in contact with something that it's greater than the ego consciousness, but it's part of us, to do magic, to be co-creators, and to develop our spiritual potentials, then I would certainly go to London, or to England, to have classes with people.
Well, you already brought a wonderful segue to the next item, but I think it looks like Anne wants to bring another comment.
Yeah, I was interested. Yeah, it's like you're going back to what you're saying about know thyself. How if we don't, no, I can't, not going to generalize. If I say if we don't really know ourselves, we don't even know the role of magic in our lives and the meaning of that. And I was just thinking that is so interesting because it's perhaps that we have been educated. Let's say I speak about my generation, and I just want to link this into you saying like the media was not following all these great developments in science. And the media has its own agenda, isn't it? But in the past, maybe 20, 30 years ago, you used to kind of believe the media. I mean, now I'm very suspicious of the media, but it's because you can see through some of the manipulation of the masses through the media, and to what objective? To keeping people under control for some reason or the other. And that is why I say like even education was a very materialistic education, an education for the purpose of fulfilling a job, still coming from the 19th century, in which it was just an element of the Industrial Revolution, you know, a piece in the machinery, producing the work that you can produce according to your talents, and that you are created in a way that you are sort of encouraged not to debate things, not to question, but do as you're told, do it well, and you will be rewarded. That kind of mentality. So you go along for a long period of time like that, and then you realize actually you haven't got a clue who you are, what moves you, what are your motivations, what are the drives that inside you, why do you have these different reactions that you're sort of hiding from others because they're not allegedly, you know, good. You know, you have to be well behaved. So your anger and your jealousies and all these kind of things, you just hide them under the carpet and pretend they're not there, and they just brew. And it's just thinking like, even when I was bringing up my children, you know, like 20 years ago, it was just starting, say, to talk to kids about their emotions, because I was brought up in a time where you didn't talk about emotions. You're told to be quiet and do as you're told. And you know, if you're well behaved, you will do well, and if you're badly behaved, you will suffer in the world. Nowadays, you know, you talk to babies and things about their, you're feeling upset, you're feeling angry, you're feeling frustrated because your milk didn't come in time, but here it is now. It's all okay. You know, you just talk on a completely different level. So I'm just thinking like, you know, this change that you're talking about now, and the media not bringing it to the people, uh, perhaps it's just progress is inevitable, as the spirits have already said, and it just comes at some point. There'll be a tipping point, and it'll just be a whoosh. And I remember like when that film Ghost came out quite a long time ago now, and then suddenly everybody was saying, "Yeah, that's how it is." You know, the connection between the spiritual world and the material world. I mean, I'm probably a bit dated. People might not know the film, but the film, the girl, she has a connection with the boyfriend who's murdered, I think, and who's having difficulty adapting to the spiritual life because he's still very connected to her. And I remember thinking, I was talking with friends, and then we never thought about it before. But when we saw the movie, we went, "Yeah, that's how it is." Like we all believe that represented something that we had an inner knowledge about, perhaps. So I think the advanced science is at the head. The rest hasn't followed through yet, but it will at some point. It will just move forward, and then it will become just common um, culture, if you like. Even things in the West like reincarnation. I remember 30 years ago when 30 odd years ago when I moved to the UK, I remember reading one or two books about, I think there were psychiatrists doing regression with patients, and they were talking about previous lives, and it was all very woo woo. That's very out there, ooh, very on the border, very fringe. And now most people you talk to, they, oh yeah, yeah, I guess reincarnation just makes sense because you know we're all energy and we come and we go. And I say, when did that change happen? It just happened. And when it happens, I think culture, like, movies and books and stories, they just flood in, and then they bring the new knowledge through. So I do have hope. Uh, it will come. Perhaps it's still a little bit early for that transformation to come through. But I'm glad, because it's the basis in science, the foundations of people who are studying, who are serious, who want to put them on firm foundations, so that we're not building castles in the sand, and that we have something that will be solid and resist, the passing of time and the questioning. But yeah, so I just felt like making those comments. Sorry.
Sorry, and what's the name of the movie?
Ghost.
Oh, Ghost. Okay. Can I just add something? Because I'm itching here. There's a wonderful synchronicity happening among all the four of us, the five of us, because I know there are people in the background, and among certainly everybody who is watching them, because I talked about synchronicity, and synchronicities are meaningful coincidences, okay? Because it's the soul in contact with other dimensions, other souls. So I just wanted to, there was here in my mind, I was listening to Anne, and there was in my mind, you can do magic, because we were talking about magic, and I know it's a song about the American group America. Okay, I think it's from the 80s or 70s. The name of the song is "You Can Do Magic," and then I simply had to look at it, and I really think you guys, and if Adam can put the letter or reference to everyone. But I just want to quickly say that the guys from America say that I never believed in things that I couldn't see. I said, if I can't feel it, then how can it be? No magic could happen to me. And then I saw you. Okay, that's the beginning of the song. And then he said, I couldn't believe it. You took my heart. I couldn't retrieve it. Said to myself, what it's all about. Now I know there can be no doubt. Then he says that everybody knows you can do magic. You can have anything that you desire, co-creators, magic, and you know you are the one who can put out the fire. And then I was listening to what Anne was saying also at the same time, and I thought it was Ghost, but I missed the name. So Ghost is totally about love. And then I looked to Adam, and above his head there's the word love. And then in the chat at the same time, Humberto, sorry, I have to give a spoiler to everyone. Humberto said that they have a kitty that was added to the family. So you see how the love and the magic of people meeting each other in a spiritual dimension bring all this love and this magic, this enchantment, and it's happening now in our podcast, so it's not nothing outside of us. It's something that will manifest when we are together and we are talking and vibrating in this dimension of the spirit and in the force that creates life, that it's love. So I just wanted to tell you that all the synchronicities is going on right now in the podcast.
Well, a bit more than you all think, because yet again we're doing another episode where essentially you've already covered the next topic. So I don't know if at this point if I should even carry on with the script or not. I should, but I think I will. So, in the spirit of this time of year where, there are many festivals to celebrate and remember the dead, and many people ornate their homes with elaborate Halloween decorations and stock up on sweet treats to give to trick-or-treaters, it can be somewhat curious to see how the idea of spirits in the afterlife can flourish, even for just a few weeks, or maybe a bit more considering what we've been talking about today. And obviously, there are all the folklore and religious connections to the dates at the end of November and the start of November. And searching through all the works of Kardec, he does mention about All Saints' Day, and it got me thinking about some of the ghoulish goings on that Kardec documented. I wanted for us to take a moment to look at one of the stories which we can find in the Medium's book. It's item 94 about the spirit of Noyers Street. So it's in item 94 of the Medium's book, the section of the hurling of objects. And it's also mentioned in the August 1860 edition of Revue Spirite, which was a monthly journal of observations that Kardec published. And the story itself is of a spirit who identified themselves as Jeanette, a rag picker who had been terrorizing the local area by throwing stones at people and buildings, breaking all the windows, just to frighten off the residents. It's what modern day films will call poltergeists, essentially. And, during a mediumship meeting at the Parisian Society, the Spirit St. Louis, who worked alongside Kardec, helped to understand things by interviewing the spirit, Jeanette. And she basically said that she'd been bored and was interested in the alcohol that was available in the house. And of course, there are many other stories about manifestations through the works of Kardec and the other studies we've been mentioning so far. So I wanted to find more about what you guys think of these kinds of stories, especially this time of year, and why do you think people are sort of on this edge of looking at the superficial side more than the scientific side of these kinds of spirit phenomena?
It's interesting that you mentioned poltergeist, because it's possibly older, but the first reference of the word comes from Martin Luther, who say that some places seem to have a trickster sort of spirit, a poltergeist, a spirit that would knock and make noise in a very physical manner. It is one of the reference we can pick to remember that these perceptions are very old and very universal. And sometimes when we believe that religious doctrine would prevent people from acknowledging this spiritual reality, we actually see that religious masters and spiritual leaders usually not only acknowledge these phenomena, but they are surrounded by them. And it's only after the passing of the religious masters that the communities start, out of fear, or maybe I don't know which other sociological process, people start blocking the direct access to the phenomena and try to domesticate it. But the most interesting thing about Halloween is that it reminds us that spiritual phenomena are a bit reckless. They are wild in a sense, and we can kind of expect anything, or at least the unexpected. We can usually expect to happen.
Yeah, I liked Umberto saying the description that it's kind of wild, because I think that's what probably makes some people scared, not having control over the situation. And when you think about, things going rattling in the night or the day, whatever, you're thinking that actually there is a spirit there that is provoking this for whatever reason, boredom, or because people like annoying others or think it's funny. And sometimes I think, well, how do you think it's funny? I mean, all you need to do is like sometimes look at a gang of young people going to the football or something, and they're doing pranks on each other and they think it's funny. So the spirits are people, so it's the same. And if you have that kind of jokester mentality and you think it's funny, you carry that over, isn't it? So in that way, it can be annoying or disturbing or frustrating. But on the other hand, if we start thinking, well, there is a person there that is without their body doing it, it takes away the sort of the fear of, oh, what kind of monster is this, or scary thing that we don't know what it is. It's just other people that now without their bodies behaving in this way. I just think it's interesting because you've got the Halloween and then you've got the Day of the Dead all at the same time, and it's here in the Northern Hemisphere. It's coming into the winter. It's when the days are getting shorter, and the shadows are longer. There's less light. There's more darkness. I think it's just kind of, I don't know. There might be other reasons, but I can see how that plays into it. And storytelling, even like we're talking about magic a little bit before, but one of the things that in humanity we have is like the importance of storytelling in terms of our own identity of our group, of our family, of our clan, our tribe, and parts of the stories of the paranormal are part of that as well, isn't it? The stories of hauntings and ghosts and things that that are part of our sort of, let's say, folklore, our family folklore or our community folklore, and of which you have, like you're saying, it's wild and you have no control. And that is sometimes, I think in the past, perhaps we were more accustomed to be out of control. Nowadays, we have an illusion that we have control of our lives. But it is an illusion, but it's just the way that society's gone. We do have control of some things more than in the past, but things could just collapse very easily as well. So nowadays, we have food in the supermarket, but all we need to know, remember the beginning of COVID, when suddenly there was no toilet paper to be had anywhere. And things that you take for granted suddenly can disappear. So I just wonder about that, our sense of safety, of being okay with the wild and the unknown, and wanting to predict what's happening next, and if we can or we can't, and hanging on to what do we hang on to keep ourselves safe, in a sense. I know that for myself, when I'm very scared, I do pray. I do hang on to the hand of my guardian angel, because that is my way of dealing with something that's very unknown, uh, or worrying. But
Like Martin Luther.
yeah.
Yeah. Yep. And we do know that a lot of the Halloween traditions stem from the old Celtic traditions of welcoming in the winter, wanting to ward off any evil doers, any evil spirits, putting out the lanterns and things, the fires and all that kind of thing. Just maybe thinking that we do actually have a pumpkin lantern. I should have put it on the shelf behind me for today, but I didn't.
I was actually going to talk about that, of course, from the depth psychology and what we say the archetypes, so ancient forms in our transpersonal dimension of the psyche, as we call nowadays Jung's collective unconscious. And I think this is great that you said, and all of you remember the Celtic festival. I think it's in Gaelic word, it's Samhain or something like that, the pronunciation. And I think if we're talking about archetypes, it's interesting that people, of course, I went to look in the internet. I already knew that it was a Celtic festival, but I didn't remember the name. And that it's a pagan religious celebration to welcome the harvest at the end of summer, when people would light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off ghosts. But what it's interesting, if we're talking about archetypes and ancient fears, because then the fear reacting to the occult and the unknown, it's of course a pattern of behavior of humankind to react with fear, okay? Because of course, we don't know what to do, and we are afraid of something that we don't know, we don't understand. But it's interesting because it says that in November, it's November 1st, and, quote, the world of the gods was believed to be made visible to humankind, and the gods played many tricks on their mortal worshippers. And I think this is very interesting because, of course, when we are talking about that, we are talking about symbolisms and ancient forms in the psyche. Because if we understand that we are also part of the spiritual realms, as Jung says, the psyche is caught between two dimensions: the physical dimension, our biology, instincts, and all that, and the spiritual dimension. Okay, so of course, if we understand that we are spirits ourselves, why don't we call ourselves ghosts? Right? Oh, because we are in a physical body, then I'm not a ghost, and then the other one, the other consciousness, that it's out of the spirit, it's in the subtle body, let's say, because if we can see there's some kind of material dimension in this. People are calling fourth dimension the spiritual dimension closest to our. Then he or she is a ghost, and I am not, because I am in a physical body. So I'm not afraid of you guys here, but if I see with my third eye, my spiritual vision, form near me, then I'm going to be scared. Of course, this is what, going back to the oracle, the Delphi oracle. So I have to know myself. If I understand that I'm also, I could say, a ghost. Of course, it's not in the meaning in the of the word, but I will turn. I hope you guys are not afraid of myself, of me, if I pass tomorrow and then I come to talk. Oh, I wanted so much to talk to Anne. Now I can go to England without flying, and then I come to, oh, Anne, can you talk to me? I want to tell you what's going on here in this dimension. And then she's scared. Oh, and I go away. Eduardo. So of course I would, well, what am I different from 2 days ago? I'm just joking, but not joking actually, because we know that when people go to the other side of life, because it's life, it's not death, then of course we communicate in a different way, right? So we have all this knowledge about mediums, beautiful books by Kardec and other spiritual and spiritist authors. But in England, it was the first time that I got in contact with a beautiful author from past century, but in England everything is today because you guys have such a rich culture. That it's Ellen Greaves. I think that it's the Wheel of Eternity, and she talks about that. I'm not going to give you spoilers, but I think a classical in England, from what I understood, is Testimony of Light, where she has, of course, mediumship, but also telepathy with her disincarnated friend, because they were developing telepathy. So these beautiful books, I think it's wonderful examples in your culture, because I don't think they had contact with spiritists, and they were doing the same thing. And so it's these are archetypal fears, I think, of something that we can't understand, because as Anne said, we have been doctrinated by status quo and materialism paradigm, that we are just our egos and we should be afraid of anything that sounds different. But we can't avoid our own nature. So, for instance, I think Ghost is a wonderful example of the movie. I love the medium. I used to laugh a lot, and I still laugh a lot with the medium. That's Whoopi Goldberg, right?
Whoopi Goldberg, yes.
She's fantastic, but it's exactly that. She was not realizing herself as a medium, all the powers that she had, in a sense, right? So she was like cheating everyone. But then when he gets, oh, I'm spoilers, but okay, of 40 years spoilers, not spoilers anymore. But of course, when she gets in contact with it, and it's all because of love. Let's go back of love, because the guy can't, go towards the light, let's say, because he wants to protect the person that he loves. So of course, when he gets in contact, because he can see, she could hear him, right? That it's hilarious. I was, it's fantastic. I'm not going to tell anybody more than that, because I think Anne was very inspired when she remembered. And I just Ghost, just wanted to give you a clinical example, okay? Because the patient authorized whenever I wanted to talk about. So it's a Brazilian guy, and it's also okay for 40 years ago when he was young. And so we cannot identify, but he went to England and to live in a city near London, okay, where he was actually hired because he was an expert of what he did. So he went in England. Everything is so like for us Brazilians, it's a lot of money to pay rent and things like that. So he was in his 20 to 30, late 20s, and he went to share a rent with one of his friends that was already there, and it would be for only a couple of years. He would come back to Brazil. So when the guy went to the airport to pick him up, the guy was so cheerful. Everybody, from 20 to 30, wow, that's so cool. We are in England. And they knew they were best friends from here in Brazil. So he was talking a lot, so enthusiastic with everything he was going to learn in England. And the guy, his Brazilian friend who was already living in England, I think for 1 month, had already rented the house that they would stay in while they were studying and doing whatever they went to do. The guy was, very serious, very, very serious. And then he said, he understands that the guy is not paying attention to him. What happened to you? And then he said, you won't believe it. I said, okay, try me. We have a ghost in the house that I rented it. They were not spiritists, okay? And they knew, they hardly could speak in English. They didn't know a lot of, I think anything about your culture, about old houses in England. You guys have wonderful old houses and castles and all of that. And then he said, oh, you are joking, blah, blah, blah. So they go, you are going to see tonight. Okay, because we can hear it because it was a ghost. Well, in the end, I don't want to spend a lot of time in that, but since it's Halloween, we have to, have a tale for people to get a little scared. So what happened is, in a good way, what happens is 20-something-year-old guys get to the house, but as people of 20s, okay, it could be just a tale that the friend is, they forget about talking about Brazil, the families, friends, and all of that. And that at night, after a certain moment, they heard like the gate. You guys have I love the gates in England. I keep looking to the gates. I love. So the gate opening of this little house. I can't remember what was the small town. And then the guy got, white and said, it's him. He's arriving. And the guy said, the other guy, okay, my patient said, oh no, these are just the water. How do you call the water? Pipes. The water pipes up in the attic or something. Okay, they heard footsteps. They heard climbing the stairs and all of that. So they were afraid, but they were, okay, guys, and they were in 20 something, so let's forget about that. We haven't heard about that. But every night the same sounds would happen. So my patient, he was not a spiritist or whatever. Now he is okay, an old wise guy. So he's totally open to studying all of these phenomena. But so he was telling me in the first contact that he had, okay. And what happened is that at one night he was lying down, and he was in his bedroom, and he sensed the presence of the ghost. He could see, like, in, with the side vision, that there was like a shadow. And since we were talking about Bahia and all of that, Humberto, you know what he said to the ghost? He said, "I'm going to talk with this guy because I can't stand it anymore." And they had into the attic because he wanted to prove to his friend. I forgot about that. He wanted to prove to his friend that it were the water pipes. And when they get to the attic, there were no water pipes. Okay, so it couldn't be that. And of course, they saw that it were footsteps. But what happens is that he decided to talk to the ghost. And he was 20 something. You know what he said to the ghost? Okay, he didn't know anything about, even about our wonderful Conan Doyle that wrote History of Spiritualism in the 20th Century, a wonderful book, right? Arthur Conan Doyle. So he didn't know anything about it. He could hardly speak any English at all. But he said, I'm going to talk to this guy. And he said in Portuguese, whatever. You should go to Brazil, go to Bahia. And Bahia, you are going to find a lot of people able to talk to you. Get a plane. The guy said like that. Get a plane and go to Bahia. What are you doing here? I can talk to you, and the other guy can talk to you, whatever. So it was like a way that he found to face his fears. He can't remember if the sounds went on, but of course he should have read Allan Kardec's Medium's book, right? And go and find and learn a lot of literature in England. But he simply dismissed and went to his work and all that and made kind of a joke. But I think it was his higher self trying to connect to the ghost, whatever. But of course, like you said, it was only like a spirit lost and thinking he was still living in his house. But the problem is that if we get afraid, we cannot train our abilities that are ours, because we are also spirits in a flesh and blood body, right? So I think it was just a tale that I remember to talk to you about, as someone that doesn't know anything about spiritist knowledge or spiritualism, that decided to send the ghost to Brazil to go to Bahia.
Well, I have to send them somewhere. And, I think from a spiritist perspective, we can't call the Ghostbusters because that's sort of against the whole idea of spiritism. But anyway.
Why not sending them to Bahia? Well, it happens that I have a couple of ghost stories, which are interesting, but also a bit long to tell. But there is one in particular that strikes me as very interesting, which comes from a PhD student, an evangelical young man from the United States that I met in Oxford, and I do not remember how the conversation shifted in that direction, or drifted in that direction, actually. But eventually I mentioned something about mediumship, but just as a passing thought. And he said, "You know what? There is a ghost in my college." and started telling a very similar story to Anahy's story, to what she just uh, presented, but in a college, which is very likely because they are centuries old, almost 1,000 years old. And he said, "Well, I heard that steps, and I could tell that the steps were coming closer and closer to my door. That was very, very clear to me. And I rushed to the door and opened the door 2 or 3 times, and there was no one there. I rushed to the stairs and walked down the stairs, and there was no one in the building. He was completely alone. I think for Christmas or something in the building. And well, at first he was a bit scared, but he was a PhD student in theology, so he was very comfortable with the idea that that could be really a ghost, and that would be the most likely answer for such phenomena. And I think that's very telling, that people around the world, even in the most hostile cultures like Western cultures today, they are ready to accept the idea after the first evidence, with only some tiny piece of evidence, they can move to that conclusion.
As we have Anahy with us today, we thought it was only right to take this opportunity to ask you some questions about your work with Joanna de Ângelis. So, Anahy, what can you tell us about how your journey started with Joanna de Ângelis?
Okay, so I was trained as a Freudian psychiatrist in my young days of residency, and of course, since I'm Brazilian, and we have some statistics that anomalous phenomena occur in non-clinical population, so population without any symptoms, okay, any psychiatric diagnosis. So in non-clinical population in Brazil, it's like more than 30% of the population have experienced at some point anomalous phenomena, spiritual, have had any different kinds of spiritual experiences. And when I was trained back in the early 90s, of course, if someone would see something that only the person was seeing or hearing, of course, you would think of a psychotic breakdown and give antipsychotics, give drugs, so that that wouldn't happen anymore. But now what happens? We all have a calling, as Jung says. We all have a vocation. Vocare in Latin is a call, and it's a call from deep within our own souls, right? We know from Spiritist knowledge that each one of us comes to this life with like something that we decided we need to learn further, or to, deepen our knowledge, a mission, whatever. And it doesn't have to be anything that to other appear like something really special, but that it's very special for your spirit and for your development of your own consciousness. So what happens is that my father's, like Jung's mother, he's deceased for more than 20 years now, but he was a medium. And a lot of mediumistic phenomena would happen to him, okay? And my mother also, they met in Spiritism in different cities, but when they were young, they met in Spiritism. When they were young, it is said, and my mother would say that when she was in a Spiritist house, right, center, since she was like 15 years old, she would give, a talk, And they would have to open the doors of the Spiritist Center because a lot of people from the outside wanted to hear her. But what happens is that I don't think I ever had the chance to say in a podcast all of this. So it's great that I'm here with you, friends from all over that will be listening to this podcast. Is something not scripted, right? But I think I should say, since we are in Halloween, so the spiritual realms, like, we feel closer to, and then what happens? She wanted to, like we say in Spiritist knowledge, to help to give light to the people. So she went to be a teacher, and she just liked very much. She wanted very much to study the development of intelligence. And then she found Jean Piaget, the French biologist that studied the development of intelligence in the children. She met Jean Piaget in Paris, in France. This is, I think it's 1970s something. And but he was materialist. Okay, a materialist. He was a biologist and wouldn't say anything about spirituality. And well, so she disconnected little by little from the Spiritist knowledge. And they stayed together till the end, but there was like my father silenced. And I am from a big family. I have two other sisters that are medical doctors. So my family went pretty much to the scientific side of materialist, of course, side of medicine. And my father silenced. But if we have a mission, we have a mission, right? And we are talking about a lot of suffering with wars and losing people with COVID. So what happens more than 20 years ago is that my father, he was the heart of the family. Okay, he was the tenderness. He was a kind of a different perspective. My mother was the mind, the science, and he was the heart. And then what happens is that he passed away, and like 4 months later, there was the fax machine. There was a communication through the fax machine from a very shy medium. So this medium had played with they were neighbors, had played with my sisters when they were like 8 years old, things like that. And what she was saying through the fax machine is that my grandmother had contacted her in the Spiritist Center. She had psychographed information, and this was going on some months before my father passed away. And she had totally lost contact with my family for 30 years. Can you imagine that? And then 1 week before my father passed away, she met by chance my father. He couldn't recognize her, of course, but she recognized him, called him, and was very enthusiastic and gave him a hug. In Brazilian, we all hug each other, okay? And gave him a hug and presented herself again. Oh, I'm this and this. And this was my father was totally healthy at that moment. Nobody knew anything was going on. This happened, this meeting, it was a synchronicity. It happened 1 week previously to his passing. Okay, so we put in the newspaper when he passed. He was a lawyer, very well known in the community. And like 4 months later, she said, this is always, so it's Halloween, so it's another story to tell about. But there was something that, like before she met my father downtown, she saw, in the last time she saw my grandmother, like my grandmother was kind of anxious in spirit. She was a ghost at that point, if you want to say. And she couldn't understand very well what my grandmother wanted to say. She said that all in the fax machine. So then 1 week later, she meets my father and they hug and they talk a little bit, and he says goodbye because he was heading to work. And then 1 week later, she saw in the newspaper that he passed away. It was very sudden. It was an embolism, in the lungs and all the stuff. So it's like, and I had one of my, I think a brother was in London, actually. We have a lot of connection to England and London. And he was taking his PhD. So it was just time enough for him to fly back to Brazil. And what happens that 4 months later, this fax comes in. And it said, the medium said that she saw some spirits coming, bringing my father to her, and that he wanted to say some words. So it's like almost 30 years ago that all of this happened. And I being one of the last children in the family, I hadn't had a lot of contact with Spiritist knowledge. A little bit. We were raised like in the science stuff, and also in like free spirits. If you want to have a religion, you just choose whatever you want that makes sense to you. If not, it's okay. So I was, but when I was 12, I remember one of my teachers asking me what I wanted to, and this teacher now it's 98 years old, and it's a great spiritist guy. He's a professor, was a professor at university, but he reminded me that when I was 12, he asked me what I wanted to be in the future. And I said, I want to be a doctor of the soul. Okay, so I went to medical school because I wanted psychiatry and I wanted to understand the soul. So I was kind of disappointed when I learned a lot of Freudian stuff. I knew it was important as an understanding of the ego, the mechanisms of defense, the personal unconscious. It's great. Freud opened the door to that. And even when I was in London, so I usually go very frequently to London, but one of the times that I went to see Freudian's museum, that you have in London, and I felt very sad. This is many, many years ago, and I hadn't discovered Jung yet, and I didn't understand why I was sad, because it's what was kind of my dream. So all of these experiences, as we develop, as we reconnect to our higher self, Jung's concept of the self, capital S, the center and the whole of the psyche. So, and we can say like your higher self, higher consciousness. And Joanna de Ângelis say, okay, Jung's self is the spirit. That's Joanna de Ângelis saying. So what happens is that I was trained in Freudian. It was not enough, but because of all these experiences of communication of my father, so of course I started reading. I had to have very little contact with anything from the past of my family, Spiritist knowledge. But then I started reading the books. And when you read the book and the ego is in kind of an altered state of consciousness, like when you are mourning, unfortunately, sometimes we have to suffer, the ego has to suffer a little bit to calm down and to reconnect with your inner, your higher self, inner dimensions. Then when I read the Spirit's book, because I had very few contact, wow, suddenly everything made, then the connections just came. Then, of course, through the years, I found Jung. And then, of course, a lot of Jungians, not all, but a lot of Jungian analysts in Brazil are spiritists, because, of course, then you connect everything. And then you find Joanna de Ângelis that, as Anne says, I love when you call her a light teacher, because she's a non-dual teacher. Of course, she's teaching the light. And what's the light? You can get a Freudian equation of our conflicts when he talks about constitution, genetics, and traumas, and our experience as a child, the complex of the mother and the father, and all of this. But there's something that it's missing in Freud's equation, that it's what? The spirit. So I say that Freud brought to psychology his great contribution, the mind, okay? The ego, the mind, the mechanism of defense, the personal unconscious. Jung brought the soul to the discussion. So our psyche, the way the collective unconscious, going deeper in our unconscious, and Joanna de Ângelis brings to the equation the spirit. So I think this is wonderful. The spirit and transcends, she wants us to go further in the collective unconscious and get, I'm quite sure that she's helping us to shift, actually even shift dimensions in a sense, to expand our consciousness. Why? Because then you can understand that we are not separate from each other. It doesn't matter the dimension that we are, in a conscious consciousness level, but we are all interconnected through the force, going back to something that it's written over your head, Adam, love, the word love. So that really the wisdom of the heart that knows love and knows the way of creating, that's what this wonderful master that we call Jesus, of course, in the West, came as an example of what is unconditional love and how unconditional love can heal us, right? Can create life. And how we, if we get far from unconditional love, if we get caught and stuck in this shadow dimension within ourselves of not understanding our inner, our deepest reality, then we'll kind of lose ourselves of this energy temporarily, of course, but we lose ourselves. So just to explain a little bit why I found Joanna, because she's bringing to the equation something that no author did actually the way she's doing before, that it's the spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Humberto, what about your connections to Joanna de Ângelis?
Well, my connection is very direct and familiar. Divaldo, the medium that is the main channel to Joanna de Ângelis, was the first to know about my coming to this world before my mother, actually. He told my mother she was pregnant, and she said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Well, yes." And he's a friend of your husband, a very good, very close friend of your husband, and he he likes to study, and just that. And she made a pregnancy test and realized that Divaldo was right. She was pregnant for about 1 month, or a bit less than a month. So my entire family is connected to Joanna de Ângelis. My grandmother founded the Joanna de Ângelis Society in my city, in Juiz de Fora, and she was a commentator of Joanna de Ângelis' work, and also of Divaldo's life. She's a biographist of Divaldo, actually. So for me, her books were always very close, and part of the fundamental and the ground of my education. So I actually I think we should have an entire meeting about Joanna de Ângelis, because she totally deserves an entire hour dedicated only to her books, for example, or to her
Yeah,
personality and biography.
yeah, absolutely. And what about yourself?
Yeah, so I come from a different situation. It's quite nice that we all come like from different angles to it. Um, I came to know Divaldo Franco, who is, as Humberto said, the medium through which Joanna de Ângelis has sent her psychological books in the late 1980s here in London. I had not met him before, and he came and he kind of asked if I would like to be his interpreter, that he would be coming to the UK on a regular basis to give talks, and would I be willing to try and be his interpreter because I was bilingual. I took on that job. I knew very little about Spiritism about the time. And every year when he came, that's when he started writing the books. Joanna started sending in the psychological books about that time. He came, it was a period of 30 years, where he came most years. He would come and we'd go to different places and he'd give talks and I would be his interpreter. And every year he would give me a gift of a book by Joanna de Ângelis. And I'd get really excited and I'd sit down to read it and I didn't get it. It was I couldn't understand. So I went collecting the books year by year, and I said, "Look, I can't understand the books. It's I don't know. It's a language that I can't understand." He said, "Oh, just keep them. One day you'll understand." And now, finally, the days come in which some things that I've been able to bring me the key to open the door to her books. So I'm just putting it out there to anybody who might have come across Rana Jones's books and read it and said, I don't really understand because I mean I could understand the words, but it just seemed like very simple. I'm sure there's more to it, than what I'm reading here. I don't get it, so I do think that it is really important to have a little bit of a psychological background, to have knowledge of the key definitions and the use of words like ego and self and things like that, because if not, it doesn't really make that much sense. So it's not a book to read as a story. It's a study book, and they are a collection of study books. And I just now, okay, when we read, I understand maybe 10%, which is 100% more than I could understand before. So I'm doing well. But it's just amazing because it really brings it. Because I used to always hear in the Spirit's book, know thyself, know thyself. And I'll say, oh, I guess I know myself. What are they talking about? I really didn't get it. And then when you slowly start, the penny starts dropping and you start realizing, well, actually, I don't know myself. And it's just thinking about, getting in contact with the darker side of myself, the things that I've hidden under the carpet of myself, which are all part of me. And it's been really interesting. I am really grateful to Joanna de Ângelis for having invited me to this project of hers and Divaldo's, and to have that trust. I wouldn't have trusted myself. That was brave of them to trust me. I had very little knowledge of everything. But they were very patient and called me into this. So I come from a place where I'm very at the beginning. I'm a great beginner, but I'm very interested now in studying psychology. And I'm referring, closing back to what Anahy was saying right at the beginning. There's that interview with Jung that you can find on YouTube very easily, in which he says the world needs more psychology. And it's true. When you say that, it's meaning we need to get to know ourselves, the different layers of ourselves, what made us like this, how we go forwards, how we develop. It's just like, for me, it's like a foreign country that I'm coming into, and it's very exciting and sometimes scary, but it's a work that's necessary to get to know oneself. And I think Joanna de Ângelis, she's helping us, inviting all of us without being psychologists or psychiatrists or having a PhD, to come and say, look, let's have a look a little bit deeper. Come and know yourself, because that is where we need to go, I think, in order to be able to transcend and to move on from the repetition of the same old, and to find new solutions for old problems.
Yeah, that's all really wonderful to hear from you all about how you had your connections with Joanna. For ourselves, it's when we had the opportunity to live in Brazil. Obviously, for me to go over there, to live there, to understand Spiritism a lot more, studying in a group, the Joanna de Ângelis Spiritual Society in Baja, in Rio, Seja Baja. Having all that knowledge there, it's really great. And you're right, these are very intense books, the psychological series. It is something that we're also involved with here at Kardec Group. We're involved in the campaign for the new translations of these works as well. And all the details about that campaign are on our website, so www.kardec.org.uk. All that's there. Okay, well, thank you everyone for all your thoughts today. So let's finish now with a moment of reflection. Anne, what have you got for us today?
Hi, so I bought from this little book, Recipes for Peace by the spirit Joanna de Ângelis. And I just opened it randomly, and it opened on chapter 5, which is called Haste. So I'll just read it through, see if it maybe a word here or a sentence there might connect to what you need to hear at this time. Impulsiveness is the cause of many inequities that afflict humanity. Anxious behavior leads to states of disturbance, generating perfectly avoidable suffering. Beneath the stigma of anxiety, attitudes are incorrect, fomenting inadequate results for inner edification. For this very reason, the practice of calmness is indispensable for a harmonious journey vis-à-vis the perplexities imposed by modern times. Patience teaches to await the results of any accomplishments which cannot be anticipated. The rhythm of time is unalterable, and this is why things happen naturally within time spans that cannot be changed. At the instance of haste, people hear and see by the way of deformed vision, which disturbs matter even further, and with clouded discernment, they plunge over cliffs of misfortune. There is a time to sow, and therefore, understandably, a time for harvesting will also come. It is useless to try to precipitate the facts of life between germination and the filling out of the grain. In the moral field, the mechanism is similar. Each phase has its own period of time, each occurrence its proper moment. So gather your moral strength in disciplined equilibrium, and do not precipitate events that should follow their natural course, aware that only that which is in your incarnation program will in fact happen. Do not suffer in anticipation, propitiating states of anxiety and bitterness which could otherwise be avoided. When suffering befalls you, face up to it with dignity, aware that it is necessary in the way of life's development and for personal recovery in the accounting of spiritual values. As Jesus said, the leaves of the trees only fall by the will of God, proving that every event is subordinated to the laws that command the phenomena of the cosmos. Likewise, in your individual world, events occur that you deserve and need. Be patient, therefore, and never be precipitate. You will regret the passionate and anxious decision, but never the one born from calmness and ponderation. If it seems impossible to bear in peace the problems that afflict you, resort to prayer and be soothed by the blandishments of the interchange between prayer and divinity, which replies by pacifying you and saving you from haste and recklessness.
Thank you, Annie. Well, everyone, that is it for this episode. So thank you for being with us. And remember, please follow Kardec Group on social media. Just look out for Kardec Group on all your favorite platforms. And also go to our website, www.kardec.org.uk, to contact us, to send us your donations to support our work, and to send us any questions for What Does Spiritism Say About. So it leaves me just to say a big thank you to my co-hosts, Anne Sinclair and Humberto Schubert, and a bigger thank you to our guest, Anahy Fonseca. And also a big thank you to everyone who's taken the courage to listen all the way to the very end today. So my name is Adam Osborne, and I hope that you can join us again next time for another episode of Insightfully Speaking, looking at the world from a spiritist perspective.